it seems in a lot of ways they did as little as possible that didn't involve pyrotechnics or practical jokes. So most nights, instead of putting up their tent, they would just throw a tarp on the ground and sleep out under the stars. One night, Jim remembers waking up and finding them completely covered in frost and just the top of their heads sticking out of their sleeping bags. His love for explosives may have come from his Aunt Kathy Edwards. Or at least it was encouraged by her. Kathy and Isaac's cousin Ben, Perrault, had a thing about setting off fireworks. Kathy actually had a group of women who are into this kind of thing called the Hot Flashes. It was a woman's club, but Isaac gained entry as the only male. They planned elaborate fireworks shows. Always a thrill seeker. On family ski trips, Isaac loved to go down the most scary, wild trails, and he loved to go straight down. The first time Isaac ever skied was as a toddler, and going down the mountain, he was between his father's knees. Jim says Isaac yelled with delight the whole way down, while Jim was holding on for dear life. As fearless as he was in some ways, Isaac was afraid of doctors and needles growing up. At 10 years old, a nurse teased him because he was already bigger than his mom, but he sat on her lap to get a shot. He had obviously gotten rid of his phobia of needles as a teenager when he had an angel tattooed on one of his shoulders and a devil or a fallen angel on the other. He explained to some people that those tattoos represented two forces that he felt pulling him in his life. He talked about them being able to see two sides of things, and that he was seeking to balance those ideas and those energies. There was a fashion-conscious side of Isaac. I mean, even in middle school, when the kids had to wear uniforms, if there was a chance that they didn't have to wear them, he and his friend Michael would dress wildly and colorfully and inspire one another. In middle school, Isaac even asked his mom to teach him how to sew, and he learned, and he sewed his own pants. There were many fun fashion phases with Isaac. Everything from spiked bracelets and long chains to t-shirts and tattoos. Isaac was definitely uninhibited and cool and pretty bizarre at times. If you met Isaac even once, he left an impression on you. He thrived on laughter. He had a charisma and a kind of a hypnotic charm. And he loved making other people laugh and making other people happy. He was always the center of attention, and he made sure that everyone who was there was having a good time. He had a great appreciation for life, and he was curious to experience everything he could. Like Thoreau, he was determined to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life. That made him great fun to be around. But the flip side of all of his exuberance and his joyfulness was that it seems that he never learned to be able to sit with sadness and being down and being bored, which we all have to do sometimes. His friend Corey from TU tells of Isaac being bored of Tulsa one day, and he spontaneously decides to grab some friends and take a trip to Fayetteville to check it out just for a night. And he remembers whenever it snowed, they would grab plastic trays from the cafeteria and go sledding for hours in the freezing cold on these trays. And Dylan remembers the last snow. He and Isaac building a snowman on campus. Doing it made Isaac an hour late for his science lab. And his teacher told him, "No, Isaac, you're too late. You could never catch up in time." But by the end of the hour, Isaac was twice as far as anyone else in the class. I just learned before coming in here from his statistics professor that he got a 96 on the exam he took last week but never got back. In some ways, Isaac was a rebel without a cause. He definitely didn't like anyone telling him what to do. My favorite example of this spirit is when the family traveled by airplane. For some reason, Isaac always put aluminum tape or foil in his shoe. And of course, the security alarms went off, and it took the guard wanding him forever to figure out what it was. He took great joy in that kind of thing. Besides laughter and curiosity and being rebellious, Isaac was one of the most affectionate and loving people. And he comes from a most affectionate and loving family, a big one, as a matter of fact. His grandmother, Bubba, admitted to being a bit jealous when he went off to college and started making new friends. After the recent ice storm, he went over to help her cut and haul limbs from her yard. It was a big job, and after it was all over and they went back into the house, Bubba found a large bag of fireworks, and she said, "I've been meaning to give these to you." Isaac said, "Can I light them off now?" And so he and Bubba spent the next hour in the middle of the street blowing stuff up. Bubba says the street had just been repaved and they put some new holes in the pavement. The last words he spoke to his Bubba, she said, "I sure do love you, Isaac." And he said, "Oh, Bubba, I love you. I love you so much." And he hugged her. And then there's his paternal grandparents, his grandmother, Barbara Perrault, who takes each of her 16 grandchildren individually on 3 trips at 3 key stages in their lives. The first trip is to see a cousin, and it comes after the first time you come home with 4 A's on your report card. The second one is to a major U.S. city when they get out of 8th grade. They went to Chicago, and Isaac loved it. She let him go up to the top of the Sears Tower alone, and he stayed up there so long she thought she was going to have to pay someone to bring him back down. And the third trip is to Europe after high school, and she took Isaac and his cousin Angela to England. These were special and unforgettable memories. Times with Isaac and his grandmother. And now we know a little bit about where he got at least some of his spirit of adventure. Isaac wanted to go everywhere and see everything. The last time he talked with his father, Jim, he was saying that he wanted to go be anywhere but Tulsa right now. So his family's planning over time to take some of his ashes and spread them all over the country and all over the world, little by little. Speaking of Jim, no one has to wonder where Isaac got his hilarious sense of humor. In Isaac's baby book, there's an entry for when he was 2, and Lisa wrote that, "Lately, Daddy's been imitating a Saturday Night Live skit for Isaac and making him laugh." You can imagine having a father who's training you in improvisational comedy in the crib. Their adventures together in scouting are treasures beyond compare. And though it was excruciatingly hard for a father to watch his son making choices that could ultimately cost him his life, and multiple attempts to intervene caused tension and strain on their relationship, Isaac loved his dad, and he knew his dad loved him. They had recently started going mountain biking together. They found a special bond in sharing this healthy and mutual experience of risk and adventure.